is April 23rd edition of Back Roads of Illinois with Cesar Delgado. We were Central Illinois agriculture source and in the Midwest alongside in Central Illinois agriculture. We were glad you're here. I visited Arlen Suderman from Stone X in Kansas City, Missouri. I asked him about Brazil's currency. He said that Brazil's Rio, it's pretty down than the US dollar. He suggested that the US farmers have to put together for their bottom line for this rally. I've been talking with some brokers. They are slow down and wet in central Illinois near Peoria. We are watching the weather for this weekend, especially on Sunday. We are going to have some severe weather in central Illinois. I have my guest on today's program with Ed Usset from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and Jacqueline Holland from Farm Futures for today's program. I will ask Ed about spring wheat in Minnesota. Okay, this is your agricultural news on Back Roads of Illinois. China demand estimate is lower from U.S. Brazil soybean is higher for demand for soybean. President Joe Biden will pull steel tariffs to China for yesterday. We will watch that for the tariff. Wheat and corn beans are advancing to planting in the Midwest alongside in the Mississippi River Delta. The planting season started with the warm weather in the Midwest from last week, but we'll be watching the weather for this weekend. Finally, Argentina had a pest in their corn crop for last weekend. They'd found for the pest in their corn crop for this harvest season in South America. This is your agricultural news on Back Roads of Illinois. This time is looking to your commodity markets update from Chicago. Corn futures finished in down 2 to 5 quarter in Chicago. Soybean were up for 6 to 10 cents. This is your commodity markets update on Back Roads of Illinois. We were coming back with Ed Usset from the University of Minnesota and Jacqueline Holland from Farm Futures. I'm joining with Ed Usset from the University of Minnesota Twin Cities. How are things with you in Minnesota, Ed?
Cesar, things are going great. It's a beautiful day outside. It's warming up. Planting is well underway. Things are happening here.
Kicking off with our conversation about this planting season in Minnesota and in Dakotas with the spring wheat in North Dakota. Could you explain to our listeners?
Well, spring wheat's a big crop here in the northern plains. Southern half, 2/3 of Minnesota, not so much. You have to get up into northwestern Minnesota and then slip over the Red River Valley into North Dakota. Spring wheat planting's going well. And I think the biggest news in wheat is the wheat market, Cesar. If you've been watching that, the doggone thing has been up strong for about 5 or 6 days in a row. I want to say the Chicago and Kansas City markets might be up as much as 60 cents a bushel or so in the last 5 days. Spring wheat, not as much, but it's been interesting to watch. A very strong market.
Yes, I've been watching this wheat markets. Ed, how do you see in the corn complex It's going to be lower than previously years. I don't want to go to tell to the corn market is down to sell off on $3 for the future. However, are we going to see it for the future?
Well, I hate to be that bearish, Caesar, but it's in the realm of possibilities. We've got a comfortable carryover in the world of corn, even though there's still a lot of corn from last year in storage. I note that the December 24 contract is trading at 475. For us to get cash prices under $4, we got to drop 25 to 50 cents in the D's contract. And unfortunately, if we have a good crop, always a big if, but if we have a good crop, trend line yield 181 or higher, I think that's a distinct possibility that we're 50 cents or more lower by harvest.
Yes, it has been potentially falling apart into a small piece.
Yes.
What are the grain market for today's open with low prices because it's been lowering demand that China is running out to the United States for Brazil? This is bricks or more political stand. Could you tell our listeners about this?
Well, Caesar, I'm not a very astute political follower, but you don't have to be particularly astute in the world of politics to know that uh, uh, China and the US are not getting along right now. They've been pretty open about their desire to go elsewhere for soybeans where they can. They can't get them all from Brazil. I do note that our exports to China in the calendar year 2023 were off 4 million metric tons from calendar year 2022. And of course, we're 4 months into 2024, and that has continued. But even more distressing for soybeans is our exports to other countries are down too. They're down to Mexico, down to Taiwan. Levels are down with Egypt and Japan too. So the export scenario in soybeans is not very pretty, and politics in China is one piece of that, but not the entire piece.
It's not so good.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
I watched the corn and beans markets in Chicago. What is the cash market in central Minnesota? Ed.
Well, southwestern Minnesota, I'll go with southern Minnesota. We're cash corn prices of 415 to 420 a bushel, give or take in that area, which is 40 cents better than our mid-February lows. And we've still got a pretty good basis out there. Much of southern Minnesota running 15 to 25 under the May contract. We've seen better, but that's a pretty good basis. In fact, Caesar, I'm a little worried that if we get a significant rally in the futures market, 20, 30, 40 cents in the corn market, that basis could back off because it's going to draw a lot of corn out of the country. In the world of soybeans, we're looking at cash prices 11.15 to 11.20 a bushel. Again, southern, south central, southwestern Minnesota. That too is about 45 cents, like corn, 40, 45 cents off lows in early March. Basis at 50 end of the May is not very impressive.
Near Austin and Blue Earth area.
Yeah, maybe even a little west of that is where I tend to look at things, but it very similar in Austin and Blue Earth.
Do you have any final thoughts on Brazilian production and world events planting season?
Well, I would tell listeners to take a look at the latest report out of Farm Doc and the University of Illinois. They have a very interesting article today uh, wondering why the USDA and CONAB, the Brazilian uh, 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 government arm that looks at yields, why they differ so much on what to expect out of Brazil. USDA is talking about 155 million metric tons in the current in the crop that's being harvested now. CONAB is 146 million metric tons. 9 million metric tons, that's almost a 5% difference between the two players. Not insignificant, and very interesting little read on what's causing them to differ some. Regardless of the lower Brazil production, Argentina's coming back from a very, very bad year a year ago. They will more than make up for whatever the shortcoming is in Brazil. From a worldwide standpoint, we're comfortable on soybean production. Planting season, I think, is going well. Off to a nice start. It's nice to see some rains in the Corn Belt and replenishing. We're getting rid of those deep dark colors that indicate drought through much of the Midwest, and that's good to see. World events, we still got a war going in Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine seems to get along in the world of production and exports better than expected, but always a concern because Ukraine is a major grain producer.
Yes, I am wondering about that too, as well on the CONAB. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
This is Ed Usset from Thanks, Ed Usset and Jacqueline Holland. We do really appreciate it. You can listen to our show on YouTube, and whenever you download to get your podcast on YouTube Music and Amazon. Thanks for listening to us. For Back Roads of Illinois, I am Cesar Delgado. Have a good day.